Is this working? Good Yontif, everyone. Shana Tova. It's so good to see you all. I know many, many more are watching, but to see so many of you masked, fully vaxxed, spread out, we have the whole Edelson Wax Hall. I want to begin, before we get to the program, of asking, how many of you grew up where Yom Kippur had a morning service and then you went back to Yizkor at later in the afternoon? There we go, most hands. So about 20 years ago, we had to think of a way to keep people here all day. Music is part, but this hour, without exaggeration, to me, was the most resonant one for you. The day after Yom Kippur, I start thinking about who are three people. Everyone's a story in this congregation of thousands of people. Elie Wiesel asked the question, why did God create human beings? And Elie Wiesel answered, because God loves stories. So anyone can talk about their story. But there are these exceptional stories within the congregation that have, I'm looking at Alex, who one year spoke. Others of you may. We had a physicians panel, not panel, sharing of 10 minutes of their lives. So Jeff Dreifus is the latest gift to Memphis, and he's been here longer than I have. Let's hear it for our new rabbi, Rabbi Jeff Dreifus. But when I chanted Torah, you may have heard me use Rav Kook's expression, L'chadesh et hayashanu, l'kadesh et hechadash, that our synagogue is not just old families who go back 8 generations. The best part of our synagogue are the new people who infuse this Jewish community, and especially our synagogue, and the city of Memphis. Leah Gafni and Mary Kanowitz, it'll probably come out when they share, our two gifts. Rabbi, I was going to ask them to go in order as we normally have done, but it's a new year, and we have a new rabbi. So I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Jeff Dreifus, but thank you, and I just want to announce that when this session is over, there'll be 2 more options at 1:30. Jacques Osmo, if you've never met this newcomer to Memphis, survivor of the Bosnian and Herzegovinian War and one of the greatest teachers about music and healing, again, like Leah and Mary, that's 1:30 here. If you want to get on the floor and listen to 3 great ones who teach yoga, even if you don't do yoga, Marcy, Jenna, and Ruthie Lichterman are going to be in the Danziger Chapel. And then 2:30 we'll continue with music. So starting now, we will go straight through Yizkor, and we won't have to, as I used to do when I was a student rabbi, go back to the Holodome in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and smell Long John Silver's on the way. And ever since that day, I'm like, it's better to stay in the synagogue. Let's hear it for our new rabbi. He's not new anymore. He's been here longer than I have. Rabbi Jeff Dreifus.
Boker Tov, everyone. Actually, slicha, zoraim tovim. Good afternoon. It's already afternoon. With no coffee, I guess time flies. I'll try to remember that tomorrow. It is really an honor and a privilege to be on this panel with such wonderful people, both of whom I actually just met since I moved back to Memphis. I grew up here and lived here for 5 years after college before starting rabbinical school. And as my lovely wife will tell you, hey Rachel, as my lovely wife will tell you, there's so many things that are special about Memphis. This synagogue being certainly at the top of the list, but really, or near the top of the list, because what really makes Memphis special is the people. And to be acquainted now and friends now with such wonderful people that didn't grow up in Memphis, but have chosen to make Memphis their home and have chosen to make Temple Israel their spiritual home. It's just an honor to be up here with them, to be up here with y'all. And I'm so excited for each of you and for you watching at home to hear their wonderful and touching Jewish journeys. I'll just start briefly by, hopefully, hold me to that because I'm a rabbi, I like to talk. But I'll try to be brief about my Jewish story. I grew up here in Temple, Israel. I went to preschool just down the way, played with Zach Kisber every day on the playground and many other friends. And I was first inspired to love Judaism in these halls. I remember sitting in, I don't know what it is now, but it used to be a piano room with the red carpet. I remember Miss Price and so many other teachers making Judaism fun, making Judaism exciting. And I have this vivid memory of Rabbi Danziger telling a story. And I wish I remembered what the story was about, but what I do remember is how it made me feel. It made me feel like I was a part of something bigger than myself. It made me feel like I was part of a story that mattered. It made me feel like I mattered. And that feeling that he gave me, that the rabbi gave me, I didn't forget it. And as a kid growing up at Temple and then later on at Jacob's Camp, I kept getting that feeling when I was part of Jewish prayer, when I was part of Jewish community, and when I would hear rabbis tell stories and teach Torah. And I thought to myself, someday I would like to be able to do that for some other boy, for some other girl, for some other child, to help them find meaning and holiness in our 3,000-year-old tradition. And so even though I left Memphis and went to WashU in St. Louis for college, and I studied economics and environmental studies, I got an internship the year before my senior year back in Memphis. I always had planned on going to San Francisco after college, or maybe New York, but definitely not here. And I got this internship at what was then Morgan Keegan. And I saw for the first time what downtown Memphis was like. I mean, I, as a kid, grew up not far from here, and we would go downtown for Tigers games or Grizzlies games, but we'd get right back on 240 and come home, and that was it. And I saw, working downtown, that, you know what, downtown Memphis is as cool as any place in this whole country. And I said, you know what, maybe I could live here. And so after college, I got an offer, and I came back and worked at Morgan Keegan in investment banking, which, please God, may I never have to work that hard ever again in my life. But what fed me, what fed my spirit, what fed my soul in the few hours that I got outside of work was coming here and creating the TI Fellowship with Rabbi Adam Grossman and David Edelson and Sam Fargenstein. And the TI Fellowship, our goal was to show that Memphis, even though like I as a kid wanted to go away and never come back because I thought Memphis didn't have that much going for it. When each of us, the three of us and Rabbi Adam, moved back after college, we actually saw Memphis as this incredibly vibrant place to be a Jewish young adult. And so the point of this program was to help bring people who grew up here and also who weren't from here originally to Memphis and to show them the kind of Jewish life that they could build for themselves as a young adult. So fast forward a few years after that, and I was sitting just in the sanctuary where each of us was just a few minutes ago. It was actually 6 years ago to this day on the Jewish calendar. And I was listening to Rabbi Greenstein give a sermon, and I was thinking about how I could become better, how I could grow, how I could become who I wanted to be in the year ahead. And I had this moment of clarity, this realization. I heard this little voice inside that said, Jeff, you know you've always wanted to be a rabbi. And, you know, because it was Yom Kippur, I listened. And I realized that I didn't want to wake up in 30 years and not have done what I always dreamed of doing. And so I just knew that even though I loved work, I loved investment banking, I loved the excitement of the business world, what I really knew was that the things I was doing in my free time with the fellowship, with Temple, that was what I wanted my life to be. So I left just a few months later, moved to Israel, started rabbinical school. It was the greatest blessing of my life. It led me to my wife, Rachel, and to the wonderful Jewish home that we're building together. I'll just say that I started in Jerusalem. I moved to LA, California Judaism, nice brand of Judaism. I got to serve a pulpit in Alaska, which was really the highlight of my experience, and maybe I'll get a chance to talk about that in a few minutes, and one in New York. But the greatest gift is to be back here, back home with all of you, helping to grow and helping to build this Jewish community that is really, the fire of this community is lit every day by people like each of you, and it's really my honor to be here. Thank you. It's now my honor to call up Mary Kanowitz to share what her experience coming to Judaism was and what her Jewish journey has been like. Would you rather sit? I'd rather sit. We're going to sit.
Hi, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you, Rabbi, for the introduction and for all of this. And Leah, I'm honored to sit with you as well. This is such a fun group and new friends for sure. It's interesting when asked what my Jewish journey is. I feel like it changes as I grow as a person. I think the obvious answer originally would have been when I met my husband, who was Jewish, and I was not. But I think it's much more complex than that. And it's like this chicken and egg story that I talk about a lot. Which one came first, I don't know. But if you'd asked me back then, it was probably, meeting Aaron. But when I think about it today, I look back and it probably began when I was 7. And so when I was 7 years old, some of you know this, my family was in a car accident. My mom and my dad and my sister Sarah, and my dad and my sister were killed in that car accident. And my mom and I survived, thank God. And I can recall from that moment of, seeing what was in front of me, of wondering what in the world was going to be next for me, that my life was forever changed, and that I even at 7, understood that I had a purpose and I needed to find what that purpose was. And so this journey starts there, but I didn't know it at the time. So I had a wonderful, my mother was awesome connecting me with my dad's parents. So I spent a ton of time with my grandparents, and my grandmother, my grandma Myrtle, who just passed away a couple of years ago, was like second mother to me, and she nurtured and cared for me and gave me my spiritual connection. She made sure that I was in a faith community. We went to church 3 times a week. We were Baptist at the time. I was in choir. I was in anything my grandmother could put me in, I was there. And that gave me this foundation that I have now shared with my own family. And so as I grew, however, I realized that while the pieces were there, the community aspect, the faith, the overall principles didn't align with how I was growing. And so I kind of just went on my own journey after that. And I went to University of Iowa and became a political science major. And with that, I really delved into studies of people and religious studies, and there was a professor at the University of Iowa named Jay Holstein, and he was actually an ordained rabbi, and he had these wonderful courses that really made religion relatable, particularly Judaism. And so his classes were so hard to get into, but I managed one year to get into what was called Quest for Human Destiny. And in that class, and I brought a prop today because this book has traveled with me, and it's very tattered, like forever. It's been on a shelf where I can see it. I got this book in that course. Normally, I would have sold back all of my books for money, obviously, right? And this one I had a connection with the Tanakh, and every apartment, which were so many, and every home, it is prominently displayed in my house. And I don't know, there was something there that I was like, this is special, I need to hold on to this. There's something I've learned here that I need with me. And then after I graduated college, I moved to Denver, Colorado, and about 8 years in, I met Aaron, who's now my spouse. We actually met through his sister. We worked together at the Chamber of Commerce. And she was really tricky because she kept saying, there's this guy, I think you really need there's this guy I know that you need to meet. And, you know, he's really great. I think you'd hit it off. And I was not interested at the time. And really she set it up so that we had to meet. We had a chance meeting, and it didn't go very well. And I was like, I never want to see that guy again. And thanks, sister-in-law, future sister-in-law. And she said, give him another chance. So I did, and the rest is history on that. And, you know, we didn't really talk about religion when we first met. It was just not part of our relationship. Just actually a couple of weeks after we met was Hanukkah, and I got invited to their family's Hanukkah dinner. And it was like, it's just Hanukkah, right? It's not like anything spiritual or religious, but there was this moment that it was like everything finally clicked for me. I was like, wait a minute, Judaism is my path, and I need to find out more about it. And so I did not tell Aaron that I was doing this, and we were not even talking engagement, so I probably could have blown it pretty big. But I called up the rabbi in town, and I said, I want to talk about converting. I want to talk about converting. So I did all this without telling him, which is what I do all the time with pretty much everything in our relationship. I just go full steam ahead, and I'll tell you about it later and ask for forgiveness later. So I came home that afternoon, and I said, I want to tell you something. I went to the synagogue, and I talked to the rabbi, and I think this is what I want to do. I feel so inspired to do this. And he was like, wait, hold on. First of all, you don't have to, in order for us to get married. I'm like, well, I'm not even talking about marriage. I'm talking about myself. So I think a lot of people make the assumption sometimes that like when you meet someone who's Jewish, well, you have to convert, you have to, whatever, your families, but that's not the case at all for us. And this has really been a journey for myself that has added in my own family. And from that point on, I just knew that I wanted to build a foundation of Judaism for my own family. And the move here to Memphis really did us wonders. I mean, we were connected in Denver for sure, but we didn't know anyone here when we first moved here about 11 years ago, and the first call I made was to Temple. We knew 2 people in town, and they were not Jewish. So that really was the catalyst to put us where we are, and now we have, Josephine and Ari, our kids. They went to the ELC. We are immersed in all things Judaism and Temple, and I joke with Aaron all the time, too. I said, you didn't really sign up for this, did you? So that's, in a nutshell, my Jewish journey.
Thank you, and thank you for being so open with us about your journey and what you've been through, but also how you've grown and how your experiences have helped you shape something beautiful and holy. Thank you. Leah.
So my Jewish journey actually started before I was born. My grandparents grew up in a very small village, Bitria, in Romania, until the Holocaust. They were Orthodox Jews, and then they were uprooted. My grandmother, my Savta Chava, who passed this last March, her and her sisters fled to Cyprus. My grandfather, Saba Arya, he actually ended up in Auschwitz. But, of course, as we all know, because I'm here, he did survive. He met my Savta Chava and her sisters in Cyprus, and they ended up in Israel with some of the first settlers. So my father was born in 1951, and they all lived in the very, very Orthodox neighborhood of Bnei Brak in Tel Aviv. And he grew up a very Orthodox Jew until about 12, when he, as the oldest, kind of decided he wanted to do his own thing. So while my uncles both stayed very much within the Orthodox community, my father went to the army and served in the Yom Kippur War, and then ended up, after the army, you travel. So he went and traveled, and of all places, ended up in Tucson, Arizona, where he met my mom. He actually had a party down the street from my mother's parents' house. She crashed the party. They met. My mother is actually from Hong Kong originally and immigrated when she was 12 to the United States. So my Chinese mother and my Israeli father meet in Tucson, Arizona, and have me. But before I was born, it was important, even though my father wasn't religious, that it was still important for my mother to be Jewish so that myself and then my brother, who would eventually come later, would be Jewish. So my mother converted at Anshe Israel in Tucson, which comes back through the story a little later. And I was born, and then very quickly we ended up moving to the Philippines. My father's business kind of took us all over. So from the Philippines, we went to Hong Kong. From Hong Kong, we went to Israel. From Israel, Montreal. Montreal, back to Tucson. Tucson to Russia for a second, to Moscow. Moscow, back to Tucson. And then now I'm here. Now I say all of this and all the places that we lived because in each of those places, no matter where we were, and as a little kid, I didn't realize, we always had Israeli and Jewish friends. Like, they were next door neighbors. They lived downstairs from us. They lived across the street. We never went to temple. I never went to temple, really, until I was much older and in high school in Tucson. But we always had Judaism as a part of our lives. When we ended up moving back to Israel, I think I was probably 6 or 7. And that's when I first met my Orthodox Jewish grandparents. And I got to meet my cousins, who were all Orthodox Jews. And I got to celebrate Shabbat in an Orthodox Jewish way, which is very different for a little 6 or 7-year-old that has never grown up that way. And so seeing the differences between the rules and the traditions of that Orthodox community and something that they had taken with them, of course, from Romania and from those roots has really, I think, shaped how I look at my spirituality. In Montreal, where I went to grade school, my parents had sent us to a Jewish school. So that's where I learned a lot of the traditions. It's where I learned a little bit of Hebrew, which, comes and goes now, but is still there somewhere. And it's where I made a lot of my Jewish friends to start. That weren't just like neighbors. They were the people that we would celebrate holidays with and Shabbat with. And then in Tucson, when I was going to a school called St. Gregory, but it wasn't religious, there was actually a lot of Jewish students. And so then I ended up in USY and doing youth group and being a part of Anshe Israel, which is where my mother converted in the first place. So now, as an adult, I moved from Tucson to Memphis. And within the first, I want to say, week of touching down, I was walking around downtown with my boss. I work for Memphis Tourism. And we ran into Barry Leff. And the first thing he tells me is, "Oh my gosh, you're Jewish. Let me introduce you to Kara Greenstein." So within a week of being here, I've already connected to Connect TI, which now I know, Jeff had started that community, and it was like instant friends. But in a way, it was like surprising, but not, because of the way I grew up, and because in each of these different countries, I was able to so quickly connect with the Jewish community. It just felt right. What I didn't realize, meeting all of these new Jewish friends, is how much I would come back to temple and the spirituality of Judaism that had always been strung through my journey, but had never been a regular practice. So I guess that's where my journey has been so far, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about other things.
Thank you, Leah. And what you said really resonated with me, all of it. But when we had lunch a week or two ago, and you told me about all the places that you lived and been in Jewish community, and it blew my mind. And I had this experience a few years ago. I was in Budapest, on Yom Kippur. And I was so excited because for those of you who've been there, there's all these wonderful historic synagogues. And I'm like, I'm so excited to feel like part of Jewish community, even though I'm across the world. So I get to the synagogue and I'm like, and I'm even more excited because it's a Reform synagogue. So they'll be like my people. But as you know, at Reform synagogues, we like to speak so that it's meaningful, so that it resonates, the lingua franca of the place. And so I go up and it's all in Hungarian and it was all over my head. But I love just being able to have being Jewish something that unites you with people all over the world. It's something very special and something that's part of who you are. So I want to ask each of you, and we'll continue the conversation. We have about half an hour left. We'll get through as many questions as we can, and maybe we'll even have time for a few questions from y'all. What do you treasure most about being Jewish?
Want to go first? Go ahead. Ooh. Are you on the spot, or I can go?
You go.
What do I treasure most?
What do you treasure most? And if you both want to pass and come back, I can go.
I'll take a stab at it. What do I treasure most about being Jewish? I think to go back to kind of my life story that I just told, there's a sense of purpose that I have found here in Judaism that shows me that every day makes a difference. That it doesn't have to be this big. It doesn't have to be. I'm losing my train of thought on this. It doesn't have to be. I think it's the giving back part, the purpose part of helping others. I feel like I can wake up every morning and say, well, today's a new day, and I can work better, I can do better, I can feel better. So I think growing up the way I did before, the focus was on the afterlife and the future. And I think what I treasure most about Judaism is that we're working on today and like working on our better selves, our greater selves every day. How we can change. Keep chipping away at changing the world to be better. So I think that's what I hold on to.
And what a message for Yom Kippur, right? That this is the day that reminds us that every day, as Rabbi Jeremy said earlier, doesn't end today, but that tonight and tomorrow and every day, it's our job to make this world a better place. Beautiful.
I think for me, it's the word family. Not just my family, my actual Jewish family, but the family that I've made, the family that I've met. I know that no matter what, for any holiday, I'll have a seat at somebody's table, no matter what. And, holding each other close, being able to celebrate together, being able to mourn together, those have always come back to my spirituality and my Judaism, and given me strength.
Yeah, and especially as someone who has been all over the world and came to Memphis, what makes Jewish community so special is that we welcome the stranger. More than any other mitzvah in the Torah is welcoming the stranger. And so for any of you here or watching on the live stream or on the Facebook, if you're new to Memphis, if you need a place to be with other people, to be in community, to have friends, that is what being Jewish means to us. And that is what is the most important thing about Temple Israel. So please reach out. If you are alone, if you want to be involved in this community, please reach out. You know how to find us. Rabbi Jeff at timemphis.org is a good first step. But that's why we're all here, is to be together and to be there for one another. I'll say that for me, I treasure so much about my Judaism. It's so hard to pick just one thing, because not just because I'm a rabbi, but the way that I am blessed to be able to see the world is through the lens of Torah. And I try to learn a little bit and grow in Torah a little bit every day. But this textual tradition that we have that stretches back 3,000 years, that allows us to be in conversation with people whose lives were so different than our own, who experienced things that we could never fathom, and yet who experienced things that are exactly what we are going through plague, through war, through peace, through family strife. we have a 3,000-year wisdom tradition that doesn't give us all the answers, but at least helps us ask the right questions. And so to have, in Hebrew it's called the Yerusha, it's an inheritance. To have something that belongs to each of us, if only we will make the time and take the time to learn and study and to bring it, to make it our own. That is what I treasure most about Judaism. How does your Jewish identity inform how you see the world? You both have really interesting professional lives that impact the city of Memphis very deeply. And I'm curious, does your Jewish identity and Jewish values inform that? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think this brings me back to the conversation we were having the other day about how having to move as a kid a lot and never being in the same place. I would meet these other kids, these other Jewish kids that got to be in the same place and grow up with all the same friends and all of the same families. And I always was really, really jealous of that. Like, I was like, how come I haven't, like, I've only known this person for like a week or a month or a year, but they've known all of these people and have these like beautiful relationships. And it's not fair. Like, I want to just stay somewhere for long enough that I can develop these relationships. But then now looking back, I think like how much that shaped me and how blessed I was to get to meet all of these people and get to see all of these places and get to, I mean, in Israel, my parents just like flung me into school, not speaking any Hebrew, and they didn't speak any English, and was like, just do it, you'll figure it out. And I did, and I learned, and I was able to soak up all of these beautiful traditions, all of these wonderful languages, all of these customs from different people throughout my entire life. So now I think the way that I work, the way that I make friendships now, it comes very naturally for me to just be thrown into whatever situation and be able to handle any situation because of that. I would also say the pay it forward and the tzedakah, as Mary was saying before, of giving back has been a big part of my life, of really digging in and seeing what I could do for others, and that it's not just about what people can do for me.
So I would also, I agree with you on that. I feel like, when I reflect on my own life pre-Judaism and then now, during Judaism, I look at my career choices and I look at the paths I was taking. And before it was, I was to begin with, I started in sales, and it was like for the paycheck, right? Like I was just like, I'm going to make all the deals and I'm going to get the money, right? And, but there was always this part of me that's like, well, how do I give back? How do I do different things? But this was pre-Judaism, and I feel like it has really connected the dots for me. And I can look at, the course of my path has changed tremendously since then. It's like, I now think to myself, well, I don't want to just make that paycheck. I want to make a difference. So I want to make it feel like I'm not just clocking in and clocking out. Like, I have an opportunity to, be passionate about what I can do for the community. And that has been such a gift here in Memphis. Being able to plug in and getting my children involved in volunteering and kind of showing them a world that they may not have known before. And showing them true tzedakah of giving back and what that looks like. It's not just, putting the little coin in the box for them. It's, going to the food bank and handing out food to people that are seriously food insecure. And I definitely find that is a piece that was connected for me through my Jewish journey, is that, I don't want to just make a paycheck. I want to make sure that my life's work is great if I get a paycheck, but really that I am helping the community at large.
Beautiful, thank you. And that, what both of you said so embodies the spirit of Rabbi Jeremy's message from just a moment ago, and what, like I said a few minutes ago, I don't remember the content of the story that Rabbi Danziger told me so many years ago, but what I do know, having grown up in this place in Temple Israel, is that the number one message that we try to teach our children is litakein et ha'olam, to repair the world, that it is our responsibility as Jews to make the world a better place. And I really appreciate that both of your answers really embody that. In my brief answer, hopefully brief, about how does my Jewish identity inform how I see the world, of course that. And that's number one. But our wisdom tradition is filled with treasures of wisdom. And our deepest book of Jewish wisdom is called Pirkei Avot, the wisdom of our ancestors. And in Pirkei Avot, we have all of this wisdom and guides for how to interact with other people and also how to see ourselves. And one of the things that really sticks with me, and I try in my interaction with other people to always embody, I sometimes fall short, but I try to always embody this wisdom, is to greet everyone with a pleasant countenance. To help, whenever you interact with another person, you don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know what they're going through. And just to be able to greet someone, and maybe if you can't solve their problem, at least you can make them feel a little bit better about themselves in that moment. And then number two, in terms of looking inside, I strive for this, and I don't hit it every day. But Ben Zoma, one of the very early rabbis, I'm pretty sure it's Ben Zoma, Rabbi Jeremy, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think he says these words, Ezehu Ashir, who is rich, the person who is happy with what they have. Ezehu Hacham, who is wise, the person who can learn from all people. I think that when we use these 2,000-year-old pieces of wisdom, they're not just words on a page. They're not just lessons that we tell our kids, but they're things that in our everyday interactions with people, we can strive to live up to. And I try to use that frame for how I see the world. Last question that I have, and then we will have a little time for y'all's questions. How does Judaism influence your family life? And or are there any special family traditions that you want to share?
I feel like, especially since we had children, like Judaism is like an all that we do. I mean, it's, you know, like I said before, my kids went to the ELC here, and so it was much easier because it was really in their faces every day. And so now that they're at a, you know, different school, like a public school, we have to work for it a little more, but that's what we make, you know, Fridays are very important for us as far as tradition goes. Like that is the day that typically all of us are home, and we put away our homework, we put away our things, and we, you know, I make sure that I make some sort of meal or at least coordinate something, and we have that moment together. And it really is kind of that ritual aspect that really shows us the week is ending. We are here to just relax and be together as a family, to pray, to light the candles, and drink the juice. And, you know, it's something that we all look forward to. And in those weeks that are too busy, or like, you know, somebody's traveling or whatnot, my kids are like, why are we not doing this? So I think for them, you know, our lives are so hectic and they can be so busy. That moment together as a family is so important to us. You know, Aaron, my spouse, is a FedEx pilot, so he's traveling half the month. And so those times are really precious. And I think Judaism brings us to the table together. And that is really one of the only moments sometimes throughout our months that we get to do that.
Thank you.
So I am the only one left kind of in my immediate family that has Jewish traditions, that you know, that has religious traditions. When I go back to Israel, of course, my cousins, when I'm with them, they're still very religious, so we do things with them. I'll say when I was growing up and younger, spending Shabbat with my grandparents was always very special. Helping my savta with the meals on Thursday and Friday morning, watching my Saba every morning with the tefillin and wrapping his hands and doing his prayers. That was always very special. Getting together for holidays in Israel was always amazing with all of my cousins, and singing and laughing and eating. Now it's interesting because my brother doesn't really practice Judaism anymore. My mother doesn't really practice Judaism anymore, but on Hanukkah, it doesn't matter. We always make latkes together. And then my father also doesn't really practice Judaism anymore. So I feel like I'm like holding the torch for my side of the Gafni family, which is really important to me. And after, you know, every time I would go and speak to my savta and we would talk, you know, it really did ingrain something into me to practice Judaism for myself. And so I think that's really special. And so now I'm creating new traditions, and when I have a family one day, we'll get to create new traditions together. But I now am just I have these traditions and get to celebrate with my family here that I've made through Temple Israel.
Thank you, Leah. And you make me think about how the people who came before us, who mean so much to us, and not always, sometimes we have hard relationships and challenging relationships with our family. But the fact that Judaism gives us an avenue and an opportunity to carry on what was meaningful to those who came before, to engage in ritual, not only in ritual, but also in moral action. And the thing that my favorite Jewish family ritual, it's actually not Jewish at all and is very Jewish at the same time. It happens on Christmas. It's when my family for many years has gone with our cousin and very close friend Randa Rosenblum and has delivered Meals on Wheels with Maifa. And I think it embodies so many Jewish things: togetherness, bringing light to those whose lives are dark and whose lives are lonely, and really striving to make the world a better place.
You did remind me of one,
Please.
which I thought was funny. My brother and I thought was very funny. Was that on Christmas Day we do eat Chinese food, and I'm half Chinese, so I'm like, it's my people hanging out with my people. It's kind of awesome.
Love it, love it. We should get together on Christmas, yeah.
We'll do
Chinese
Maifa, and then we'll get some Chinese food.
Perfect, perfect. So I want to open it up. We have about 5 to 10 minutes. Are there any questions? And then I'll repeat it for the people watching on the live stream. Yes, Stacy.
So tell us about Alaska. How did that help?
Sure.
How was your pulpit there? And what did that do?
Sure. So the question was, tell us about Alaska. Alaska is the largest state in the Union, and the Jewish communities are very spread out, as you can imagine. I serve a pulpit in Juneau, which is the capital, but is cut off from the rest of the state by water or by impassable mountains. So you have to enter either by boat or by plane. And only about 5 or 10% of the Jews who are part of that community grew up in Juneau. Most of them came in the 70s, were like, this place is amazing, and never left. It is amazing. And it's very special for a few ways. Number one, the community that I serve never had a full-time rabbi. But yet, every Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I never had to chant Torah because kids from the community chanted the Torah portion. And the fact that a community with no full-time Jewish educator, with no rabbi or cantor, raised a generation of kids who could chant from the Torah is very special. And it shows the dedication that they have to their Judaism and to keeping it alive. And we're very blessed here to have Ricky's challah. In Juneau, there's no such thing. We do have FedEx, so I guess they could get Ricky's. But in Juneau, every Shabbat, they make their own challah. For Pesach, for Passover, the gefilte fish that someone served me at their home was made from fresh caught halibut, served with salmon eggs, local salmon eggs on top. And every Shabbat, when I started in LA serving Juneau, and then when I switched to New York, someone thought, and that someone is me, thought that it'd be a good idea to go from New York to Alaska once a month, which was quite the schlep, but to honor the people who would come to Torah study in the morning, I'd bring New York bagels, and they would bring lox that they cured on their own. And those Shabbat mornings, no one in the entire world ate better than we did with New York bagels and Alaska lox. Sorry to mention food on Yom Kippur. Other questions? Yes, and is that Dave?
Yes. Where exactly, I should say, what exactly do you guys do, and what was the circumstance that actually brought you to Memphis?
The question was, what do we do and what brought us to Memphis? Is that correct? Well, I am currently working for junior achievement at Memphis in the Mid-South, and I'm in development there. And we came to Memphis 11 years ago because of my husband's job. He's a pilot for FedEx. He started out on the corporate side of flying and is now a 757 captain. So we kind of, this was in his long-term plan to be in Memphis. I didn't really know that when we got married, and I had never been here before. So the day after we got married, we got the phone call from FedEx, and we were here within a month after that. So Denver to Memphis, and here we are, and with no regrets. So we have had the best experience here as a family and as a married couple, and Temple has become our family here now, and so we're so grateful for that.
So my parents actually separated back in I want to say 2000, and I was still in Tucson with my mom. Well, my mom met my stepdad. I think they met in 2004. They got married in 2006. So he is born and raised Memphian, and so she came here in 2006, and they got married in 2008. That's what it is. And so I would come visit, and Ward Archer is my stepfather. So. My mom, I would come visit, and my mom was always like, you should come move here. I'm like, why? No, why would I move? I'm not going to move to Memphis. I'm not moving to Memphis. And she's like, come on, come be close to me. There's all these things going on. I'm like, no, I'm not moving to Memphis. I have a life in Tucson. It's fine. And then maybe I'll go somewhere else. So I would come and visit every 2 years or so. And she would just lay out the red carpet, look at this crosstown thing, look at Overton Square. Let me take you here. And so in 2016, or at the very end of 2015, I ended up being like, okay, you know what? I'm going to give Memphis a shot. And I ended up getting a position at Memphis Tourism, and I've been there the last 6 years. And of course, working for tourism, I feel like I drink the Memphis Kool-Aid all day long. This city has completely hooked me. There are so many great things going on. I've met so many great people. So now I couldn't imagine living in Arizona.
Beautiful, thank you. I want to say, for all of you watching on Facebook or on the live stream, if you don't live in Memphis, move here. Yes. For those of you who do live here, in the fellowship, the TI fellowship, we brought Jewish people from Memphis and Jewish people not from Memphis to live for 10 weeks and work for 10 weeks over the summer. Without fail, every single Memphis kid, I take that back, very many young adults from Memphis had a negative attitude of Memphis. Without fail, every person who wasn't from here, who came here, thought that this was just an incredible place. And so I ask all of you who grew up here or who've been here many, many years, look at in 5782, look at this wonderful city with fresh eyes. We have so much to be grateful for, this temple community, and so many things in our city that you lived in Denver, you lived about 1 million places, and you're here, and that says it all. So thank you all for being here. I want to give it to Rabbi Greenstein to close up. And thanks to our two wonderful panelists for sharing their story.
Someone has to thank Rabbi Dreifus. Amazing. As one of you said, this was an amazing conversation. Leah and Mary, not even 1 degree of separation. It was Joe Black, right? Yeah, so Mary's former you know the Ruach music we've been doing for 20 years? Her rabbi informed a lot of the music from Denver. And Leah's met rabbis from Israel to Arizona. So it's just beautiful that we're one tapestry. I just want to repeat, this is all-day nourishment for body, mind, and soul. I had the best seat in the back, not only because I was taking in the three of you, but I was sitting behind Jacques Osmo, who's about to share at 1:30 after a stretch break the link between music and healing, especially and including COVID-19 cancer. The work that he's doing will blow your mind. And then I was sitting behind the three yogis. Jenna, Ruthie, and Marcy were in the back. And now I believe they're in the Danziger Chapel. So for those of you watching, this and the sanctuary have been streamed this hour. The same will repeat next hour. You can go to the yogis, go to healing, watch both later. But again, one more big thank you to our Rabbi Jeff Dreifus, Mary Kanowitz, and Leah Gafni. Good Yontif, everyone. We'll pick it up at 1:30.